We overthink and we guess what's happening in their head. And we actually are not very good at guessing correctly. Hello, and welcome to Somewhere on the Spectrum. Today, I want to talk a little bit about friendship, which is always a tricky subject for us, really, isn't it? Kind of. Today, I want to talk about responding to friends. So whether it's in a conversation, in an argument, what are we doing about that kind of thing? Now, this can vary dramatically. And I would say that in general, it's probably not a good idea to follow the neurotypical norms because we're just not very good at that. At least I'm not really. I think I've had more success with my friendships since I became aware of my autism and started to just allow myself to lean into the honesty that comes with my autism. Rather than trying to be what the neurotypical community society wants me to be, I instead am a little bit closer to what I feel is the right thing to do. Then it would mean that if I'm having a conversation with someone, I am more likely to be honest. Of course, I'm still trying to be careful with my honesty. I don't want to hurt anyone. I'm not trying to be abrupt or to hurt people's feelings, but rather I'm trying to be honest in my friendship. And that might include telling them what's happening, saying I'm having trouble understanding, saying this is kind of stressing me out a bit, and acknowledging the challenges that we have. With my best friend and I now, I think we have had so many conversations that we are able to actually be honest and say, I think this is what's happening right now. Is that what's happening right now? And that's actually really helpful because you're not then just guessing what's happening in the other person's head, which I think a lot of times that's what we do. We overthink and we guess what's happening in their head. And we actually are not very good at guessing correctly. We may have a gist, can maybe pick up the energy of something, but it's very hard for us to know whether that energy is actually about us or directed towards us, or whether that energy is actually about something totally different that is unconnected to us in this conversation, but we are still picking up on it. And because neurotypical people will rarely explain that core part of the energy that's bothering us, they will rather go around it, then we have made our own judgment to assume that it must be about us. But I think once you ask the question, quite often it has nothing to do with you. If they will tell you, a neurotypical person who is not your closest friend might not be able to tell you that thing. And hence we get this assumption that it's about us. So I think the first thing is to try and get to that honesty and maybe say something like, I'm feeling this kind of energy from you, or I'm worried that you might be feeling this way about me. Is that true? And try and get an honest perspective from them. And sometimes you're not going to believe what they tell you, but you have asked the question now, so you do need to kind of try and trust what they tell you. The other thing I want to look at is actually when you're talking to friends and they're telling you something difficult. So if your friend is telling you a story, telling you what's happened to them, telling you about their bad day, whatever the situation, our response very often is kind of story exchange. It's very common for us to show, look, I understand what you're feeling because, look, I have the same situation. And we're basically saying, I relate to you because, look, I've had the same situation. And the problem is a lot of times neurotypical people hear this and they think that we're changing the subject. They think that we're diverting the focus from them to us. They don't read this as us sharing our story to demonstrate our understanding. They read it as us diverting attention away from their story. So that's part of the challenge for us. As neurodiverse people, we have to hear those stories and we have to decide what are we going to do with them. Sometimes we can ask the question. We can say, are you looking for a solution or do you want me to just listen? And I think that's a really good idea if and when we can remember to do it, if we can be processing fast enough in the moment, which is a totally other story, but very relevant. So if we can process fast enough and we can remember to ask, do you want a solution or do you want me to just listen? then I think that can give us the clarity we need to be able to respond in a way that is relevant and helpful to the person that we're listening to. If we don't have the chance or we don't remember to ask those things, then the chances are we're going to try and solve their problem. For me, in most cases with neurodiverse situations, the first thing people do is try and solve the problem. So it's important when you catch yourself to ask that question, but also to give the permission that we don't have to keep talking about this. Recently, in a meeting I was in, one of our women shared a challenge she was dealing with, and we all jumped to problem-solving mode, which was fine, but then we got stuck on problem-solving mode, and we were just going round and round in circles with so many solutions. And finally, she said, "Thank you for listening. I think you've helped me enough. Let's move on to something else," which was super helpful. It did seem a little abrupt in the moment because it's not something we're used to hearing, but it was so helpful because all of us needed to know. We actually needed someone to stop us and say, "Thanks, I'm good, thanks, okay, enough." We really needed to hear that because we needed to know that what we'd said was useful, but also we needed to know that we could move on. We could change the topic. It was fine now. And in fact, sometimes we're so excited to be helping them that we overdo it and like that's enough. They don't want to talk about it anymore. So that's another thing for us to bear in mind. Are we actually listening to them still? Are we still paying attention? Or if we got carried away by like, okay, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this or this. Like, no, actually, we need to still be paying attention to that person, checking in with them, finding out, did they want the solution that we're giving them? Have they had enough now? Do they want to talk about something else? And I think as you get more comfortable with your autism, then that honesty gets easier to cope with. That situation that happened in our group made it easier for me to feel like in future, I could ask someone, do you want us to keep talking about this or are you done? And in the past, I would have felt like they should just tell me that if that's the case. But now I understand that we might not be able to notice that. We might not be able to see that. So actually, we need to have the guts to ask, do you want me to keep talking about this or are we done? Should we move on to a different topic? And give that permission to get out. So then the other piece here is we often slip into problem solving. Actually, what most neurotypical people want is just listening. I think when we know that, it's easier to do. But if we don't know that, it's super duper hard to do. And that's why it's useful to ask this, would you prefer solutions or do you just need me to listen question? Because then we know we're acting from what they want. And they might later come back and say, no, actually, I want solutions. Now, what do you got? You know? But if we know that they need us to listen, it's much easier to just focus on the listening, right? I think it's also worth thinking about, is this a telephone conversation, a video call, or are you together? If you're together, you might want to have some kind of fiddle toy with you so that you can keep focus on the conversation because you've got something happening with your hands. If it's a telephone call or a video call, I would suggest doing something like drawing or coloring. For me, coloring takes next to no effort, but it keeps my eyes distracted so my ears can focus on listening. If my eyes aren't distracted, then I will end up finding something else to do and my ears will turn off. So it's really important for me when I'm having those phone call conversations, especially on the phone. Video call is a lot easier for me, but phone call is really, really hard. So for me, when I'm on the phone with people, I usually get my coloring out and then I can listen much better because I have something distracting my eyes. This is totally weird for neurotypical people. They think that we're focusing on the coloring. They don't realize that we're better at listening because we've distracted our hands or our eyes. So it's something that you might need to discuss with neurotypical people in your family or friend groups so that they understand what's happening. But likely after you've done it a few times, they'll start to realize that you are actually listening better, in which case then they won't mind anymore what you're doing because they'll understand what's happening. A lot of this is a little bit about education for you and about education for other people as well. So main thing when you're responding to friends, try and figure out what it is actually that they want so that you can be better and easier at focusing on helping them in the way that they need helping. It's very easy for us to think that we know how to help people, but actually, maybe we don't sometimes. So, asking for that clarification, being honest about that is really, really helpful. Okay, let me know in the comments if you have any experiences of this, if you have any other phrases that you use to help you cope with these kind of situations. Please let us know in the comments because that's all really, really helpful. All right, see you next time. Bye.